Hello, everyone. We're so glad that you're joining us tonight. My name is Eddie Young, and I get the opportunity to serve Fort Mill High School as our career development facilitator. Tonight, we have a lineup that's excellent, that's awesome. We're talking about the soft skills and how they can give you the secret to success for your future. This is the kickoff, the very first in our series called No Limit November, because we want you to know that there's no limits to your future. Now, like I said, I have a great series, a great panel here that's lined up, and I'm going to go around and let them introduce themselves really quickly. Now, my good friend, Miss Susan Brackett, I'm not going to make her talk. She is my colleague, my right hand here at work. She and I work very closely together. I tee him up, she takes him on home. So, hey, Miss Brackett, how you doing this evening? All right, and then we also have Miss Beth Ann Weaver. Can you introduce yourself really quickly?
I sure can. I'm Beth Ann Weaver, work for Cummins, and I work for sales and service as a talent acquisition leader for North America.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Weaver. We also have Mr. John Beatty.
Good evening, everybody. Work with Cummins Incorporated, and I am actually the Technician Apprentice Program Manager for North America. So thank you for having us tonight.
Awesome. And last but not least, we have Mr. David Taylor. He is our focal point for tonight. And Mr. Taylor, go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone, please.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Young, and hello to each of you. We're honored to be here. Yeah, been with Cummins. Fact is, I've only had two jobs in my lifetime, and Cummins, if you don't know, is the largest independent diesel engine manufacturer in the world. With roughly 60,000 employees around the world, and I lead a lot of the technician hiring pathways work for the U.S. and Canada.
That is awesome. So once again, we're so glad that you all are with us. We have a series of questions that we're going to go through. So as you see something come up, as the topic kind of hits you or moves you, feel free to hop in and share a little bit of your experience. Okay. So our first question is, what are the positive attributes that employers expect from their employees?
Well, that's a good one, and it's a great one to get started. When I reflect on my career and the people that I've worked with, there are a number of things that come to mind. Dependability and reliability. Both of those are extremely important. But what about a person's reputation? It's not always what we get done in our career, but it's what we leave behind, and our character, a positive can-do attitude. How we talk. It's language. We never know who's listening. Projecting confidence, having good communication skills, written and verbal. And one that's really important, to be trusted, you have to trust others. You have to be trusted. So being trustworthy, integrity, being a great listener. There's so many things. And then what about non-productive use of cell phones? I mean, that's absolute time killer, in the workplace, and a productivity killer. And one of the most important ones in my mind is loyalty, and what drives that loyalty within the workplace.
Those are all great. Does anyone else want to chime in on that?
I can't add anything else. David summed it up good.
Excellent. This next question is coming straight from our teachers. Which soft skills do companies see lacking in recent graduates and new employees?
I'll go ahead and take that one. I would say communication skills is a really big one that we continue to need to have work on. It's, understanding how to face people who are aggressive or don't potentially agree to your thought process. And so how do you communicate and understand that? It's also reflecting. It's your self-awareness. So it's the intrapersonal skills and how you're self-aware of your own beliefs, opinions, and potential biases, especially in today's society. That's important for you to be aware of, continue to grow yourself. And it's also leadership skills. Even though you think you aren't a leader, a lot of times you actually are. People are actually watching you all the time. And so that's a leader attribute that a lot of people need to hone in on more, as well as we're talking about positivity. A positive attitude is extremely important. You don't want to always be a negative Nelly or a naysayer. Because of adapting to change and the flexibility, you have to have a positive attitude to be able to continue to work and partner. I happen to work with John and David on a regular basis, and we have fun. It's a positive environment, and so it makes a big difference.
That's very good, very good. A lot of great nuggets inside there. Thank you very much. One thing that you noted or that you mentioned is the ability to work with each other and work with people. And I think something that comes up very often is, sometimes you want to just kind of you want to state your case and whatnot. And that's easier to do with your coworkers and your colleagues. But tell me this, folks, is it ever okay for a new employee or a younger employee to challenge their supervisor? Is that ever okay? Is there a way that they should or should not do that?
Yeah, I'll take that one, and I think the answer is yes. And the way I look at it, is it okay to challenge the status quo? Is it okay to challenge what we're doing today and not necessarily embracing change? Management doesn't always have the answers. We really don't. Real leaders don't like to work with a group of yes people. They want open, constructive feedback. They want transparency. But, once a decision's made, it's our responsibility to get on board and support that effort, whether we agree with it or not. And there have been countless number of times where I've been in that same situation. I was at a high school north of Charlotte, probably 5 years ago now, and it was a diesel automotive and diesel VOTEC program in Iredell County, and the principal is retired military, and he had a quote from Colin Powell in some of the classrooms, which to me really struck home. I took a picture of it, and that quote, from Colin Powell, American statesman and retired 4-star Army general, he said, and I quote, "When we are debating an issue, loyalty means giving me your honest opinion, whether you think I'll like it or not. Disagreement at this stage stimulates me. But once a decision is made, the debate ends. From that point on, loyalty means executing that decision as if it were your own." And I thought that was pretty powerful. So it's okay to challenge management. It's okay to push back. But we have to do it in a respectful way.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. That's excellent. So it's okay to disagree, just don't be disagreeable.
There you go. That's a good way to say it. Thank you.
I like that. That's excellent. Thank y'all so very much. Now, shifting gears just a little bit. Actually, I want to circle back to something that Ms. Weaver said a little bit earlier. I'm talking about cell phone usage and how it impacts job performance. We know that as a society, we are attached to our phones. But for our young people, how could that positively or negatively impact their job performance?
Yeah, I'll take that one and welcome comments from Beth Ann and John. Obviously in today's world, we can't work without cell phones. I mean, we're tethered to it. It's like an electronic leash. But it's good. but there's also a bad side to it. You know, you watch employees in the workplace that are trying to work and be on the phone or looking at YouTube or searching the web, taking away from their productive time. So in that sense, it can be very unproductive, and it's costly to employers. One of the things that we talk with our employees about is something, and this was shared with me many years ago, is the value of a minute. Now, in our world, in the service business, we bill, for, a technician's time. So when you bill that time, every minute counts. So we talk about the value of a minute. So regardless of which profession you're in or how, the amount of money you make, if you do the math and determine what you're paid per minute and you add 30-40% of that to benefits, it's very costly to a company for unproductive time. So even though cell phones are great, it can also be very costly to the business. And managers watch that. They get it. I mean, they understand, who's abusing that privilege that we have.
I'd like to add something that when I'm sending kids out to meet professionals, I say that cell phones have absolutely no place in the introductory part of a relationship. If I'm getting to know you, I shouldn't be looking at my phone. But then to the point of, kids grow up with these and this is the way they find their information and they're so good at it. So if we take David's example, if a technician is looking at his phone or her phone, I always tell them, tell your manager you are looking for some information. If it's appropriate, you don't want to make an announcement, but if there's a moment where the person is apt to think, what the heck are you doing? We're in the middle, you're working or whatever, or if the customer is questioning what you're doing, I'm looking for some information relevant to our problem here. It makes some sort of announcement because otherwise you'll be seen as rude or misusing the time.
Yeah, thank you. That was good.
Now, speaking of time, and like I said, the importance of a minute, another question coming straight from our teachers talks about how students can develop their time management and customer service skills. So Mr. Taylor just talked with us a little bit about how important each minute is throughout the day. Well, that means that we have to manage our time. What are some ways that our students can go about developing their time management skills and in conjunction, their customer service skills?
I think it's just, so it's a good question, Mr. Young, and I think it's just being cognizant of what our time is worth. And I was well into my career before that thought really struck me. And I saw an article about the value of a minute and what this unproductive time does cost a company. So being cognizant of that, understanding what abuse, can do to the bottom line, which impacts all of us, one way or the other, is something that your peers and management watches. One of the phrases that we use in our business is people watch every move you make, whether it's good or bad. Sad part is a lot of people remember the bad and not as much of the good. So if those privileges are abused and we're not working to manage our time and to be focused on what we're trying to get done, it does get noticed. So, and John ran a service department for a number of years, so he probably saw some of that in the environment that he was in as well.
Absolutely. Mr. Bay, do you have anything that you'd like to add on to this?
Yeah, I think when you start thinking about those, I guess you can say when disrupting the flow of things, it as a manager, you got to kind of be mindful of that situation, just as Ms. Brackett was saying, a lot of times they're looking things up, and using their phone as a tool. And today, the privilege I have today of working with all of our apprentices coming in, I've learned that I've had to kind of mold my communication to them because, they're tech savvy. And it's been a challenge for myself to get to where, I'm used to one-on-one conversations, but now it's three or four letter texts to try to get the point across. So it's the change of things.
All right. Now, all these different messages are coming across. They're coming from many different places, many different areas. And there's lots of receiving of information, or I was to say there's lots of sending of information, but sometimes I wonder, is the information actually being comprehended? Let's talk to us a little bit about how our students can become better active listeners. Okay. They're getting lots of information coming from everywhere, but how can we help our students become better active listeners?
So I'll run with that one because just to kind of feed off of where we're at, as we think about today, it's simple to blame it all on the cell phone. But I think that one of the soft skills that we all need to work on is, maintaining eye contact with the person you're speaking with. That gives you the ability to show that speaker that you're listening to what they're saying, you're taking in, you're not getting, you're not looking at your cell phone, you're not looking at your computer screen. I always made it a habit when I was a manager. If I had any of my technicians come in or anybody that came in, could be a salesperson, to have a conversation with me, first thing I would do is grab my cell phone, turn it on quiet, and then I would close my computer screen because I didn't want that interruption while we were having that conversation. And I think it's you kind of help that person become a little more comfortable during that conversation also, because sometimes people are when they walk into a manager's office, they're not real confident of how things are, but when you shut all those external things and you focus on that one person, one of the things is while you're maintaining that contact, you try to listen to what they're trying to explain to you. Try to picture that, what they're explaining to you, what they're talking to you, and a big one that I've fought myself for my entire career is don't interrupt. Because I know we're all guilty of it, but wait for that break in the conversation to ask further questions. When you interrupt somebody, you send a lot of different messages. Number one, you say, hey, I'm more important than you are. What you're telling me is not important. I don't care about what you're telling me. So, we want to make sure that when you're listening to somebody, those are some of the key points. And as a manager in the past, I've had opportunity to interview some young professionals, and I'll call them at that, and I tell you one thing, and Susan, you'll appreciate this one. When I met Jacob, that was one of the first things I noticed is firm handshake, eye to eye contact. Anytime we had any conversations, he was spot on with, face to face, and actually seen him, before COVID, but I actually spent a little time with him at the college, and it was the same way. So that's been instilled into him, and you can tell, while we say cell phones, are a big cause, I think that these soft skills of face to face, watch their body language. If somebody's trying to explain to you something that happened in their life, you can watch their body language, and it'll show a lot about how that conversation is going. So, and also, one of the things, you never sit there, if you're listening, don't cross up because you look like yourself, you're closing yourself into what, always remain open posture with it. So, but great questions. So thank you guys.
If I may add, just for our listeners' sake, that Jacob is a student who is an apprentice with Cummins and made a nice impression on Mr. Beatty and Mr. Taylor when he first met them, and is an amazing good listener.
Yeah, I'll add too, on top of what's been said already, is to even see if you do have good listening skills, is, especially in a work setting, is summarize what you've heard and confirm with the person that what they just said is what you've heard. And that helps to hone in on your listening skills as well. And that's sometimes when there's so many distractions around you, it's good to actually do that. And it also aligns to make sure that you're on the same, level of thinking too, and actually comprehended what they were saying. So sometimes it's the intent versus impact, which is where your listening skills need to be honed in on as well.
Yeah, John is maybe one that would say that I can come up with a story for almost anything I hear. And that's just because I've been around a while. But I was at a restaurant, an IHOP restaurant 3 or 4 years ago, and a young couple, I think they were UNCC students, were sitting there having breakfast. And they were sitting there when I got there, when I got my check, and I had the same server. Yeah, I asked the server, I said, if you don't mind, give me their check. Well, do you know them? I said, no, I don't. Well, why are you picking up their check? I said, well, just tell them they sit there for an hour and never once touch their cell phones. Mm. I mean, that's communication. They weren't interrupted by a cell phone. They didn't look up something. And that struck me. So yeah, I bought their breakfast.
It's all right. It's all right. So in other words, next time I take my wife out, I need to make sure there's an area where Mr. Taylor is.
Just tell me where.
Yes, sir. All right. We've hit on this a little bit along the way, but I want to kind of just lay it all the way out there. And you all have touched on this just a little bit now. We know that when we're speaking with people and interacting with people, if you're an extrovert, it's a little easier. You kind of get that energy from people naturally. But if you're a little more shy, if you're introverted, what is one thing that you can recommend for a shy student to help build his or her confidence?
Well, I'll take that one. For people that know me today, probably would not say that I've ever been shy in my life, but I was. When I was younger, when I was in high school, and I didn't have a lot of self-confidence, and even out of high school, my dad, constantly encouraged me, and I was in skilled trades for several years, but I wanted to do something different. And my dad encouraged me to join Toastmasters International, which I did. The hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And when I stand in front of groups today, I'm nervous, but I think I've figured out how to channel it most of the time, and how not to show that nervousness. But preparing yourself through professional organizations after high school, like Toastmasters International, can help a great deal. And one of the quotes that I've always enjoyed is Abraham Lincoln said, "I will prepare myself, perhaps my chance will come." Mm. So we can get over that, but it just takes time, and it takes time to build that self-confidence. But I think I think anyone can do it. A great question. Thank you, Mr. Young.
I'm an introvert, so I enjoy, and so what I have to do in meetings is actually, if they want an immediate response from me, and it's a lot of data that they just threw at me, I will have to let them know that I need time to digest, think about it, and then I will be able to get back with them. So that way they also, know expectations that I'm putting out there. On my team, I have introverts as well. And so I will sometimes, knowing that they won't put their hand up because they'll let the extroverts keep talking, I'll actually call them out and ask them to provide an answer. And that way it stops the conversation for them to be able to speak up and give them that opportunity. So just because you're shy doesn't mean that you don't have a voice that needs to be heard. So I think that's important as well, to realize that there's all kinds of individuals, and it's, as a leader, figure out a way to adapt to those different styles as well.
I love how you create opportunities for the introverts on your team to speak. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for doing that, Ms. Weaver. I have my youngest son is very much so an introvert, so he would really appreciate that. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Now, speaking of work, we know that they are, for those who are watching right now, they're budding career business people. They have lots of different things going on, but sometimes you just need a start, right? How do you get your foot in the door for a promising career?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So how does that happen? We all hear about resumes, and I've seen some resumes. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm sure Beth Ann in her world has seen many of those. But, create a resume that will put you at the top of the stack. In other words, the employer really wants to meet you and understand the person behind that. So it's something that you want to put some time into. So before you arrive, investigate the company. When someone walks in and they're looking for a job with Cummins, even, someone that's coming into our apprenticeship role, when they start talking about Cummins and they've researched it, in depth, then I know they're serious about it. The code of conduct. Are you involved in a community? What are your diversity goals? So there's so much that we can share. Never show up late. You got to be on time. Dress appropriately. You want to dress accordingly, but you don't want to overdress, and represent yourself as who you really are. So I have an example. I hired someone many years ago. I'll just call him Ringer. I won't call his name. Great resume. He had his folder must have been a half-inch thick. He was in a coat and tie, polished shoes. 90 days later, he showed up to work, his shirt tail out, came to work without a belt, shoes unpolished, just very, very unprofessional, and he didn't last long. So he's put a good foot forward in that first 90 days. But after that, he thought, well, I'm in now. So it's not just getting in the door, it's figuring out how to stay there as well.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Taylor. Now, continuing down this road of asking about work, what personal expectations should students have regarding their own work performance? I think lots of times when it comes to expectations, we think more so about someone else's the expectations we have for someone else. But we also, as we grow and as we mature as students, we have to be able to hold ourselves accountable. So what type of expectations should students have regarding their own work performance?
One of the things that comes to mind is having a personal mentor. I can think of three people in throughout my career, with two organizations that really shaped, who I am today. Neither one of the three ever told me how to do my job. They led, they didn't direct. I watched how they operated. They would have a suggestion instead of, here's what you need to do. Well, what do you think about this? You think we can take this approach? It's how you say things and how you approach the people to get them to want to do a good job. So just as an example, the former Cummins business owner in the Charlotte area, and he was president of the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce, for a year, Chuck Grace, at an annual company meeting that we had, he spoke to 4 items, and I'll never forget this. He spoke to 4 items, and his goal was to ensure that his team across 3 states and 12 locations had integrity, proper etiquette, and dignity for others. And this was in the 80s and 90s. And he said, I have 4 rules. Follow these and you'll have a successful career. Be on time. And I can promise you, if you're late for one of his meetings, you may not make the next one. And that's a habit. And he said, develop the habit. And he said, so be on time was one, tell the truth was the other. And he followed that by saying, Mark Twain said, tell the truth and you don't have to have near as good a memory. So, be on time, tell the truth. And then he said, work in harmony. And this was plastered all over the walls, all over the company. Work in harmony. And that's basically understanding yourself and your coworkers and realizing that we're not all the same. And he said the last one was have fun. And he followed that up by saying, don't get number 1, being on time, confused with having fun. So that was a fun way to end that. But be on time, tell the truth, work in harmony, and have fun were 4 things that have stuck with me throughout my career.
And those tenets are things that all of us, not just our students, but our parents, our faculty, our staff, everyone can latch a hold on to. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Certainly.
Now, I would love to hear everyone just give one example of this question here. What does having a great work ethic look like?
I'll make a pass at that one. So, first thing we have to do is understand what work ethics really are, and I think it's a moral principle that I personally use in every day. And it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to pertain to my job. It's at home. It's in anything. But, reliability, dependability, cooperation, your character is a lot, and as David touched in on the other, punctuality, when you think about at the high school level and at school level, we're being taught early about punctuality. You've got to be someplace at a certain time. If you're going for a job interview, as David said, don't be 5 minutes late, because as a manager, I can tell you I've moved on to something else. So, we want to make sure that those opportunities are there. So, when I think about that, I look back at my mother. My mother, I think, is the one that put my work ethics to point, because growing up, I watched her work sun up to sundown to make sure me and my sister had what we needed. So, she instilled a lot of drive into myself, and I take that every day and move that forward. And develop your professionalism, and it goes beyond the suit and tie. It's your attitude and your values and your demeanor. We like to always have these conversations working in a shop environment. You never know who's standing around the corner. So you always want to make sure that your professionalism is always on point. So those are a few that I had.
Yeah, and I would also say safety is extremely important to us. So just valuing the workplace and the safety. So right now, in the midst of COVID, it's wearing your mask, it's social distancing, it's following the rules to keep not only yourself safe, but your work peers and the customers that may come in. And so forth. So that it's just a good value to have, as well as what was the other thing that I was thinking about? Respect. So being respectful at all times, even if you may not agree to what the other person is saying, to be respectful that that's their opinion. You don't have to agree or disagree. But just be respectful about that is extremely important. And one thing, the values at Cummins that I can relate to. I mean, it's caring, it's integrity, it's excellence. So my work ethic, my grandparents had a farm. And so your day didn't end until the job was done. And so that's where I've always had, just because it's 5 o'clock and it doesn't mean I close my laptop and it's done. If I still have things I need to do, I stay later to get them done. Even though I'm not getting paid anymore, to work over that. That's the drive that I have as part of the work ethic that I can think of.
And I can add just both, all of that are just excellent examples. I can add one thing to that from a manager's perspective. If someone with a good work ethic doesn't have to be managed, they almost run it themselves. Someone with a poor work ethic, management is constantly giving guidance, and managers like people that figure it out for themselves and have a get it done attitude. So I can say, as an employee, someone with a good work ethic is not only easier to manage, it's easier for that employee as well. They don't have someone constantly looking over their shoulders.
All excellent points. I feel like I have to add something I tell kids all the time that will really show off your work ethic is if you're grateful for every opportunity you get, chances are they'll give you more opportunities. If you just say, thank you, is there some way I can learn more? Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. I never said no. Every time my manager came up to me, hey, would you like to do this? Yes. Even though I was like, oh, another thing.
I remember being too young and naive to realize what I was asking. But sometimes when I'd hear upper management talk about like a weekend retreat or a trip, I couldn't help myself. I said, could I go? And I remember like one manager in particular looked at the upper manager of mine, I didn't report directly to him. I was like 3 rungs down. And it was as if his face said, is that kid serious? And the manager is shaking the head. And he said, of course you can.
Wow.
Nice.
Folks, we have just a couple more questions, but I just want to once again just thank you all for being here tonight. I really appreciate you all volunteering your time and being here with us. This next question, it sounds a little heavy, but I think once we unpeel the layers, it'll really help our students. What is emotional intelligence and how can it help us?
Wow, what a great question. Yeah, I read a book. I'd heard a lot about emotional intelligence, but I read a book several years ago by Daniel Goleman, and he talked about the 5 components of emotional intelligence. And that book just happens to be laying on my desk behind me. So those 5 elements are self-awareness. I've worked with people that have no idea the kind of messages that they're sending off, the kind of questions they ask, getting into things that really have no business in the workplace and not caring who's listening. So self-awareness, the ability to recognize and understand your moods, emotions, that affects and the impact or the effect it has on others. The second one is self-regulation, and that's the ability to control and redirect disruptive impulses and moods, to think before we act. The third one is motivation. Lots been written about motivation, but from Daniel Goleman, he said the passion to work for reasons that go beyond money. And that's pretty important. I'm really proud to say that in my career, I've never asked for a raise in my life. If you do your job, it comes. Maybe it's not as much as you want, but you've got to work for something other than just money and pursue goals with energy and persistence. The fourth one is empathy, the ability to understand the emotional makeup of other people. Just understanding that we're not all the same. And that's good because we all feed off each other. And the last are social skills. And that's proficiency in managing relationships and building networks. So, that book was very impactful. A manager that I worked for 5 years ago that I have a great deal of respect for, when I shared it with him, he read it and he said it's one of the most impactful books he's ever read. So, yeah, thanks for asking that question, Mr. Young. That was really good.
Not a problem. And can you share with us the name of that book one more time?
Yeah, they stayed up real late to figure this one out. Emotional Intelligence is the name of the book. And there's a lot written about it, but Daniel Goleman, Goleman, is the author.
Awesome.
Very well written.
Yes, sir. That's great. That's great. So to our panelists, we have one last question. Very simply, what is the secret to success?
And, that's one of the most important questions of the evening. I don't think anyone's ever been successful unless you form a habit of doing things that failures don't like to do. And I'll say that again, is the habit of doing things that failures don't like to do. So to me, that's what makes a difference. Our success is in our hands, and our success is based on our purpose in life. Some people are afraid to press forward and challenge the status quo, as we talked about a little bit earlier. But learning to push back in a respectful way is pretty important. And never go to your manager complaining about something if you don't have a solution. I was taught that very early on. If you have an issue with something, chances are you have an answer. It may not be the right one, but you can at least share it with your manager. And I was in a conversation with Miss Weaver a couple of months ago, and she was reading a book called Rebels at Work. And Rebels at Work, there's a good and the bad. And there are good rebels that promote change and unity and cohesiveness and just building a better environment. And there are bad rebels that fight everything, that don't get along with anybody, and nobody ever has the right answer. So to me, those are the secrets. And a lot of it's about self-awareness as well. Thank you.
I would say too, from my perspective, is actually learning from my mistakes. Not perfect by any means. And I've been put in situations where I had no clue what I was doing, but put my foot forward and said, I'm already in it. So trying to figure it out. And that's where the relationships that you build with others help you too. Because if you don't know, I can contact David and say, David, I'm dealing with this situation. What do you think? And he can direct me or give me, based upon his experience. And so leveraging others to help me grow and to continue to develop. I have been out of school for several years now, but I still read books. I'm still looking at different ways of, developing myself personally. And so that's another avenue that I would say helps an individual be successful, is that you're willing to learn and adapt and be flexible as you gain more responsibilities. Luckily, I had people believe in me more than I believed in myself and put me in situations that I thought that I would never be managing a team. And here I am managing a team. So, I thank those people. And when you're talking about gratefulness, I was grateful that they put me in those situations. At the time I wasn't, but after the fact I was. So thank you again, Mr. Young, for the opportunity to be on the panel here.
Yeah, I'd like to add just one quick statement to that, to what Beth Ann said. Yeah, I had some insecurities in moving into a vice president role many years ago. And the manager, one of my 3 mentors, told me, he said, David, you'll never see in yourself what other people see in you. And I think that's true for anybody. people see things in others that we'll never see in ourselves. And that was very impactful for me.
Yeah. And I think that also goes along too, David, with asking for feedback. So
Yes.
I'm always the kind, I'd rather just get it over with. Tell me now before I hear it, when I don't want to hear it. So it's like I'm preparing myself, for negative feedback. And a lot of the times it isn't negative. It's like, you did a great job. So that helps my self-confidence and, ability to then the next time I'm put in that situation, I've got this and don't have my own insecurities as I'm dealing with that. So I think it's good to know we all have insecurities.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what age you are.
Absolutely. Mr. Beatty, Ms. Brackett, anything you want to add on? Want to chime in?
Well, the only thing I'll add to it is because after Beth Ann and David they went through, is never be scared of the challenge. Take on any challenge. I can think back, 2.5 years ago when I moved into this new role, it was completely foreign to me. But again, as it was mentioned, people see things in you that you didn't know, and I appreciate those people that see those things in me that have helped me get to where I am today. But never back away from a challenge. There is, unless you're a doctor, there's really no way to go wrong. So, we want to make sure that, in normal business, mistakes are made and we know that, but, always challenge. And then as Beth Ann said, you build that group of coworkers and mentors, as David said, that you can always fall back to, when you get into something that you're unaware of, you always build those relationships and building those relationships goes, all the way back to what we discussed earlier about, being mindful of your attitude and how you interact with your coworkers. If you're that grateful person, there's going to be a lot more assistance down the road. But if you're a negative Nelly, as it was put, people are not going to be prone to be that receptive to help you in those times. So I would say it's a lot about building your support force. Just like in every day, you've got your group of friends, but in your business, in your professional life, you also have your group of friends and coworkers that support every move, and they're always there to help you and support you. So thank you, Mr. Young.
The only thing I'll add before we go, it's really piggybacking on what everybody has just said. It's a little bit of everything that was just said. Is I'm back to gratefulness, because if you are seeking your manager's input on what you could do to improve or to grow or to be more successful, you're going to be grateful for that feedback, even if it's max. It really, I love the boy who said, when I said, when you get negative feedback or constructive feedback, what do you do with it? And the whole class is looking at me. I'm standing up close to him, and I heard him say almost to himself, improve. And that is a beautiful thing. Yep. If you can take constructive feedback and just simply appreciate it, be grateful for it and improve.
Yeah, I call it a gift. Yeah. My team laughs at me. Feedback is a gift.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you all once again for joining us. To all of our students, faculty, and parents who are watching, thank you very much as well. Appreciate you spending your time with us. Make sure that you jump in next week. We're going to have another session. We're going to be talking with the Associate Director of Admissions from Davidson College. I'm talking about how to submit your best college application. Once again, my name is Eddie Young. I appreciate you all being here, and we'll see you next week. Y'all have a great evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.